Local news, national news, even feel-good news. Delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Look, if you live in a nursing home, if you're old and you live in a nursing home, you only have, 5-6 month life expectancy. Almost nobody in a nursing home is in a point to vote. Those are the words from a Republican candidate for Senate in Wisconsin. He has floated the idea that people in nursing homes should be disenfranchised because they're simply too close to death. I want to get your thoughts, first of all. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. I think, for one thing, I think he's getting nursing homes and hospice care facilities mixed up, right? Or do I misunderstand the difference between a nursing home and a hospice facility? Hospice, my understanding is that's where people go to die. That is when people sign, they get their paperwork in order, they get their affairs in order, they sign a do not resuscitate, and they have exhausted all forms of medical treatment, and they know that grandpa or grandma is in her final months or days or weeks or whatever. But people live in nursing homes for a decade. I mean, people can live in nursing homes a very long time. If people are, there are people, in their 50s and 60s that live in nursing homes. If they have early onset dementia, perhaps, or if, they have other issues, they have other physical issues or mental issues, they could live in a nursing home. But do you think that there's a point at which we should not allow old people to cast a vote? Because that's what this guy is saying. His name is Eric Hovde. How would you pronounce this? It's Hovde. Hovde. Do you think? I feel like one of those letters is silent. I'm just not sure which one it is. Could be the H. Maybe it's Avdi. Maybe it's the D. Maybe it's Javi. Maybe it's the V. Hadi. We'll just go with Eric. So there's this guy named Eric, and he's actually endorsed by Donald Trump. And he is looking to unseat the Democrat Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin for the United States Senate. And he says, if you're in a nursing home, you only have 5-6 month life expectancy, so you shouldn't be able to vote. Hit us up in the open mic. Let us know your thoughts about that.
I think if we can have a geriatric old man for a president who has dementia, we can have the elderly vote. What is wrong with America?
Yeah, you make a pretty good point there. All right. You can let us know, 844-580-WDBO, or hit us up on the open mic in the WDBO app. It's time for the presidential pinger. We have hidden GPS trackers on the presidential candidates to follow their movements around the United States as they campaign for POTUS. We called it the Joe Kelley presidential pinger. We got a smattering of states that are going to vote in their primaries through June. Nobody cares about that. Not even the people that live in this smattering of states, as it is a foregone conclusion as to who the candidates are going to be. They're Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Again, a rematch. We're 97 days away from the Republican convention. That's going to be in Milwaukee. We're 132 days away from the Democrat convention. That's going to be in Chicago. We're 210 days out from the general election. I'll tell you, in the presidential pinger today, I don't have anything from Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't do anything today. Donald Trump, though, has crashed out of the ranks of the world's 500 wealthiest people after the value of his meme stock has nosedived. Nosedived? Nosedivin. Nosedived. Took a nosedive. The former president has fallen off the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. His net worth has dropped below the $5.8 billion threshold that is required to make the cut. Forbes' rich list pegs Trump's total wealth at $4.8 billion. Only $4.8 billion. Do you know that ranks him 659th in the world? We have a lot of billionaires in the world right now. Donald Trump held a spot in the top 300 on Bloomberg's index just a few days ago, ahead of the likes of George Soros, Mark Cuban, Giorgio Armani, and Bernie Marcus. Also in Trump news, a New York appeals court judge denied Donald Trump's last-minute request to shift his hush money case out of Manhattan, thwarting the former president's latest attempt to postpone the April 15th trial with just a week ago. That trial gets underway next week, and it is a criminal trial that will mark the first time that a former president has ever been tried for a crime.
Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. Up in here, up in here. Y'all gonna make me go all out. Up in here, up in here. Y'all gonna.
That's your presidential pinger. Let's get to the phones here. 844-580-WDBO. Mindy is in Orlando. You're up first today. Hi, Mindy. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. How are you?
Wonderful. Beautiful,
I met you
beautiful
a couple
day.
Years ago in Sanford. But anyway, I called to tell you two things. One, I'm a nurse.
Yes.
And two, I've had my dad in hospice. So first thing is, hospice, if you have less than 6 months to live, you're put in hospice. And then you also have to make a choice that you no longer want any life-saving treatments done.
Sure. Any extraordinary efforts.
And that, right. And so that puts you in hospice. If you want to continue things and do CPR, then you can't be in hospice.
Got it.
So that's...
So, and I hate to put it this way, but I mean, it is where our eldest citizens go to die.
Well, in hospice.
So that they're being well cared for in their final days.
Yes, but in a nursing home, you could also have somebody, let's say they're 65, 68, they live by themselves, they fall and break their hip.
Right.
So they're going to need a little bit of time to rehab. They can't go home until they're safe. So they go to a nursing home, to a different level of rehab. It's not as intense as your inpatient rehab.
Sure.
But you go to a nursing home and you get it. It's longer and it's not as intense.
So in either of those scenarios, Mindy, should people that reside in either of those settings be denied the ability to vote?
No, they should not.
So for your father in hospice care, you're completely fine with he and others that are there with him casting their votes coming up in November?
Well, let me just put it to you this way. My dad was in the nursing home for about a month. And I would say the first 2 weeks, he was alert and oriented and with it. The last 2 weeks, especially the very last week, he was unresponsive. So in the last 2 weeks, no. In the first 2 weeks, yes, he was alert and oriented.
So I think what this guy is getting at, this Republican Senate candidate, is that in nursing home facilities or hospice care facilities, that someone other than the patient is filling out the ballots. I think that's where he's going with that.
And he could be right. He could be right. There's never a true number to say, oh, you have 100 people in the nursing home, 50 are with it, and the other 50 are like Sleepy Joe. But, what can I tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
It's if somebody doesn't have the capacity to make decisions or run the world, as we say, then no, they shouldn't be allowed to. That's being nice, and they shouldn't be allowed to vote or run the country. Well,
and certainly, I think the last thing we want, Mindy, is someone showing up at a nursing care facility or a hospice care facility, with 50 blank ballots on them. And then quote unquote helping patients fill out their ballots. I mean, that is something that we want to avoid, but I can think of better ways to manage that than simply disenfranchising senior citizens.
Correct. Yes. There are ways to do that.
Mindy, was it a delight when I met you? Was I delighted to meet you?
Yes, we met. It was in Sanford. in the morning at one of the restaurants.
Oh, yeah. That was we were doing Joe on the Go.
Yes.
I remember that restaurant there, like on the main street there in Sanford.
Yeah. So I was running into work, so I was like, I got to go meet Jeff Kelley and say hi.
I'm so glad you did, Mindy. Thank you so much. And thank you for your call. Thank you for listening. I got a lot to thank you for.
I love listening.
I appreciate that.
Have a good day.
You too, Mindy. All right. Thank you so much. Let's go to Connie in Orlando. You're on the Joe Kelley Show. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Joe. You probably just about hit everything that I was going to say, but I think this might have sparked from the 2020 ballot harvesting. It was so crazy. There's been people that witnessed these people going in with ballots and literally holding the hand of this elderly person that may even have been like semi-comatose.
Yeah.
And getting the ballot. Now, I don't know if this is the right way to go about it, to disenfranchise. And maybe I'm not sure where you got your info, and I'm not going to pretend to know anything about it other than what you're telling me, but it could also be skewed. You know how they skew everything. If Trump endorses somebody, well, they're already the devil, you know? So I think it's a good idea in some ways to control that harvesting. But as far as even hospice,
totally agree with you, Connie. That there's got to be a way to make sure that the person who is the voter is actually filling out his or her own ballot, or if they're physically incapable of doing so, but they're mentally and verbally able to communicate who they want to vote for. If someone is able to mark that ballot for them, I don't have a problem with that either. But I have a huge problem with someone walking into an elder care facility or a hospice care facility, with 50 blank ballots and walking out with 50 filled out ballots and it not properly expressing the will of the patients therein.
So what would even be the result for something like that? Because there was a gentleman that actually, he was a witness as he worked there. He said when he was a younger man, because it happened forever. And he said he literally walked by a room where he saw this lady holding the older lady's hand. And he looked in and was like, "What are you doing?" And she just got up and shut the door. So I don't know how you're going to get a hold of something like that. So it's one of those either all or nothing, which is a sad state to be in.
Well, I think it has to. I think standard rules would still have to apply, and that is, I think that if somebody is in an elder care facility, I think they would have to request a ballot. Just showing up with blank ballots is not going to cut it. I think they have to have the mental wherewithal to request a ballot, and then each ballot is applicable to a specific person in a care facility. And if you have to have two people to act as witnesses to, for this, maybe someone from the care facility and someone, from the election of or the registrar of voters that gather these ballots. But if it's a partisan, person, if it's someone who represents the Democratic Party or someone who represents the Republican Party, I mean, that just can't fly. We just can't do it that way.
So, this is really just a drop in the bucket, though, when you even think about it, because when you consider all the millions of illegals that have been flown all over the country in different states who are getting, they're going to be able to vote because they can actually do it with their Social Security number. They don't need a valid ID. So the hole is so huge that I think we're just trying to put Band-Aids on it, but it isn't working.
Yeah, they're not supposed to vote, Connie. If they're not here if they're not here legally, they're not supposed to be able to cast a vote.
I know that.
But of course, where there's a will, I'm sure there's a way, right?
Yeah, and if that doesn't work, pay off their student debt. They'll vote for you.
They're buying a lot of votes that way with the Biden campaign now, aren't they? Connie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Have an awesome evening. It's beautiful outside. Sunny skies now, 81 degrees. I'm digging this weather. A light breeze out this afternoon. Coming up next here, we'll take more of your phone calls, more of your open mics on whether or not you believe that just because somebody's in a nursing home, they should be denied the right to vote. And all the stories and headlines you missed while you're at the office today. That's coming up next on The Joe Kelley Show.
Now, from the Bogey Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
I kind of see his point. I mean, we have limits on young kids, and you have to be over 18 to vote, so why not have an upper limit?
If you're just joining us, a Republican candidate for Senate in Wisconsin says if you're living in a nursing home, you only have 5-6 months life expectancy. Almost nobody in a nursing home is in a point to vote. So he's suggesting that people in nursing homes, and I would argue that he actually means hospice care more so than nursing homes, but he says that they should not be able to cast a vote. We'll get some more of your phone calls coming up here in just a second. You can leave us an open mic in the WDBO app.
From your office to ours, we're breaking down today's big stories. Here's what you missed while you were at work.
More than a year after the fact, Norfolk Southern agrees to a $600 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit related to the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio in February 2023. The FBI arrests an 18-year-old for a violent plot to attack churches on behalf of ISIS. A New York State appeals judge denies Donald Trump's bid to delay his April 15th trial on criminal charges stemming from hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, while the former U.S. president appeals a gag order in the case. James and Jennifer Crumbley, the parents of Michigan school shooter Ethan Crumbley, have both been sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison for their role in a mass shooting carried out by their son, the first case of its kind in which parents have been held responsible for their son's criminal act. What do you think about that? Do you think that is a slippery slope, or is it about time that parents are held accountable for something like that? Peter Higgs, the physicist who theorized Higgs boson, dies at the age of 94. Now Laurel will explain to everybody what Higgs boson actually means. It's okay. You know what? I looked it up because I was going to share it, and I was like, I can't even I can't even begin to explain Higgs boson, so forget about that. Arizona Supreme Court rules that a 160-year-old near-total abortion ban still on the books in the state is enforceable, adding the state to the growing list of places where abortions are effectively banned. The FAA is investigating Boeing after a whistleblower raised concerns with 2 jet models and claimed the company retaliated against him. They better put this guy on a suicide watch if it's anything like the last Boeing whistleblower who put a gun in his mouth and blew his head off. And as Laurel reported, a Florida woman is sentenced to a month in prison for her role in to, quote, steal the diary of Ashley Biden, President Biden's daughter, and then sell it to Project Veritas. The prosecutors called it a plot to disrupt the 2020 election. We'll get into that coming up a little bit more. And the ratings are now in for the men's tournament from last night, and we can report that the women's college basketball tournament final drew more viewers than the men's final for the first time in history. Pretty impressive for the women. All right, that's all these stories that you missed while you're at work today. Coming up next, more of your phone calls. We'll get to Helen and Elizabeth coming up in a moment. More of your open mics as we talk about whether or not old people should be banned from voting. We'll have more of that coming up straight ahead.
From the Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
All right, Helen. Helen has been hanging on for a while now. Helen, thank you so much. Checking in from Seminole County. You might be like in Polk County at this point, quite frankly. But thank you for holding on. Thank you, Helen. How are you?
I am doing well. Actually, I just drove from Volusia back into Seminole County. But I have a lot to say, hopefully in a short amount of time. It sounds to me like that person just is trying to make up for his state's poor election laws, because the election laws here in Florida will not allow you to do anything like ballot harvest. There's no way that an organization can just go in with ballots. Each individual person has to have a ballot on request. They have to be registered to vote to even request a ballot. And it's against the law to ballot harvest. You cannot have more than 2 ballots that are not yours or your immediate family to turn back into the elections office. So it sounds to me like maybe his state just needs to update their laws instead of trying to disenfranchise.
Are you simply well informed about election law in Florida, or have you been involved with it?
I have been involved with it.
Have you been like a registrar of voters?
No, like in the elections office.
Got it. All right. I'm sorry. Working in an elections office.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, so typically, then, how would, if you have a hospice care facility, there's 100 patients in there, how would one go about getting votes from them?
So it depends. Like a lot of elections offices will go out and they'll send representatives from the office, have the people, come down and they request their ballot. Of course, they have to have all their identifiers to even request their ballot. And then if they choose to have their ballot mailed to them, it's mailed. If the facility can request to have the elections office come out and do what's called supervised voting. And the supervised voting, of course, there's a whole litany of laws that go with that as well. It's bipartisan. The elections office goes out. We are neutral, of course. And that is all, again, supervised with party balance as well.
We used to not be very good at elections here in Florida, but it seems as if in the last decade and change, we've gotten a lot better at handling elections.
Well, every year it seems like they tweak it just a little bit and tweak it just a little bit more. But I would say Florida has it down. We were lucky to not have a bunch of recounts and to not have close elections in 2020. And I think a lot of states who were experiencing that for the first time realize how hair-wringing it can be. But for us, we're used to close elections. We have processes and laws in place to handle pretty much anything that comes our way.
Great information, Helen. I'm so glad you held on, and thanks for sharing all that with our listeners.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too. Drive safe. Jim is checking in from Davenport. Hey, Jim, you're on the Joe Kelley Show. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine. My wife is in a care center here in Davenport, and let me tell you, she would be so pissed to hear that her vote wouldn't count because she was in the care center. She is very aware of politics and all that, and I tell you, oh my God, she would be really, really upset.
I would be upset for her, Jim. I would be angry. I mean, this is there's not a whole lot that would cause me to go out and protest something, but this would be one. I mean, I would be outraged if we denied our most, and I'm not saying this to be politically correct, but if we were to deny our most seasoned residents the opportunity to vote, I would be absolutely outraged by that.
And not only that, but I assume you can figure that I am mentally competent and whatnot. I will be joining her in a private room in that facility in the next couple of months. So are you saying that because I'll be in a care center, I'm not going to be able to vote?
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but I get where you're coming from, right? Jim, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. I'm right there with you. I think it is entirely outrageous that he would even propose such an idea.
We need to get away from this silly notion that you can trim off the concept of life either at the beginning or at the end, and that you can simply take away civil and constitutional rights from people because, well, you just don't think they kind of are alive enough. Baloney. If I'm on my deathbed and you take away my voting rights, I'm coming back to haunt you.
All right, duly noted. Thank you.
Being a Republican, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that they don't have rights because they're too close to death and say that the unborn child has the right to live. So you can't have it both ways here.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Thank you.
If you're not going to let them vote in the hospital, then Joe Biden can't vote for himself.
Several people have made the same point that both of our leading presidential candidates could potentially be prepared or ready for a care facility of some sort.
Kelley, what about fingerprinting ballots?
What about fingerprinting ballots? You know, here in the state of Florida, we do require a photo ID. A lot of states don't even require any form of an ID, and fingerprinting ballots. And by the way, I think what you mean by fingerprinting ballots is proving your identity through fingerprints. I don't think you mean forensic analysis to see who touched the ballot. If that's the case, then yeah, I wouldn't begin to know about forensic analysis of something like that. Also, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the parents of the Michigan school shooter, Ethan Crumbley. This is the first time ever. This is the first time ever parents have been held accountable for something that their son did. So their son went on a shooting rampage back in 2021 at Oxford High School in Michigan. The son was sentenced to life in prison without parole last December. He killed 4 students. The parents of the killer today were sentenced to 10 to 15 years behind bars for their role in this incident. Their primary role was they bought the gun for their son. They also missed ample red flags that this kid was a ticking time bomb. So do you think that this is a dangerous, slippery slope of parents getting charged, or do you think it's about time parents are held accountable for the actions of their minor children?
Yes, my name is Hector. I think it's about time that the parent pay for the kid's action because the kid has mental disorder and they bought the weapon. So they're responsible. They're guilty as the kid.
I mean, if nothing else, you know, it's like a straw purchase. I mean, that it just on gun charges alone, they should be facing charges.
Maybe, just maybe, for Hunter Biden doing illegal drugs, illegally possessing a firearm, Joe Biden should be tried for it also. How about that? Where do we stop?
I can't tell if you're being serious because Hunter Biden is an adult. Ethan Crumbley is a minor. He was he's 15. He was 15 years old when he used the gun and murdered 4 people. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll get some more of your comments coming up in a moment. We're also going to unpack this whole thing about this Florida woman who's been sentenced to jail for a month for quote-unquote stealing Ashley Biden's diary. I don't know that it was actual theft, and it seems more like this is political persecution than an actual justice served. We'll get into that coming up straight ahead. Stay with us.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, from the Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. News, weather, traffic, all the things you want on your drive home. Plus, Joe Kelley being, well, Joe Kelley. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
All right, we got a lot of really good questions, good comments here. First of all, we're talking about the Crumbleys. Ethan Crumbley's mom and dad have been sentenced to 10 to 15 years in jail for their role in the school shooting that took the lives of 4 students. We're also talking about a political candidate that wants to outlaw voting for people that are in senior care facilities, saying, you know, they only have 4 or 5 months left to live, so why allow them to vote?
Hey, Joe, can I go a little bit extreme on who can vote? especially people with Down syndrome. And don't get me wrong, these are angels, but do you think they know the difference between the two candidates we have? Can we have a professional opinion on this?
So that is a great question. First, let me just say, and there are all kinds of absolute morons that cast votes. And I'm not even looking towards people with Down syndrome. I would never in a million years speak about people with Down syndrome like that. But there are people that cast votes for candidates because they think they're good looking. There are people who vote for candidates because they've heard their name before. There are people who vote for candidates because, just a variety of dumb, nonsensical reasons. And honestly, I don't think anybody with Down syndrome would be any more dangerous with a ballot than would be some of the morons that cast votes. I think Rush used to call them the uneducated voters, the lower educated voters. That having been said, in federal code, there is a law, there is an ordinance about people who suffer from mental incapacity. So, yes, it is possible that people with Down syndrome and other people with mental disabilities could be prohibited from voting if they're declared mentally incapable. So that is possible, yes.
Hey, Joe, I agree with it 100% that the parents get sentenced, mainly because, not that they bought the gun, but what they did afterwards. They took off and ran and hid. They blew it off when they were in the school. The woman wanted to get back to her job. They just didn't care. And when it came down to them, they took off and ran and hid. And I agree 100% that they go to prison.
You know, I'd forgot about that. I forgot that the Crumbleys took off. As soon as their son committed the murders, they went into hiding. They fled because they certainly knew that they did something terribly wrong.
I think these parents getting charged in voluntary manslaughter for their child's action sets a bad precedent for our legal system. All these other school shooters, they had signs of things that the cops overlooked. Some of them had been arrested and let go, but you don't see any cops getting in trouble or anything legal happening to those people. But the parents get in trouble for their kids' actions. It's ridiculous.
All right. Thank you so much. 844-580-WDBO. Jerry is joining us now on the Joe Kelley Show from Edgewater. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to put my 2 cents in and say that I don't believe that if you're on disability for, like you said, you'd hate to say that Down syndrome people can't vote, but if you're on any kind of assistance from the government, maybe you shouldn't be able to vote because you don't know better on how to operate yourself yet.
Well, I mean, there are people who are on government assistance that are veterans. I mean, there's all kinds of people that are on government assistance. I think you mean people who suffer from mental incapacity. Am I misunderstanding
I'm talking about people getting like food stamps and unemployment and stuff like that.
All right, then think
about for people who have pensions and have worked for our country.
So think about the millions of people that Joe Biden is paying off their student loan debt. I mean, if that's not a vote buying scheme,
then they can't vote.
If that's not a vote,
cannot vote. That's
well,
what I say.
Yeah, that would be really tough to enact that kind of legislation. I don't even know where they would start.
You just find out if they got money this year, and then they get off the records. But yeah, it would be because they can't even get the record straight now, so much less start vetting people.
Well,
I agree.
Right, but it's more than vetting the people. You would have to get a Congress that is willing to create that kind of a law that says if you're on any kind of government assistance, you don't get a vote. I mean, that kind of takes us back to, only property owners get to vote. There are people who today believe that only property owners should be able to vote, and that's the way it used to be. We don't have that anymore, but that's the way it used to be. 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Coming up next, we'll take more of your calls and comments. And we're going to unpack this nonsense about Ashley Biden's diary being stolen and a Florida woman now going to prison for a month for quote-unquote stealing the diary. I'll explain how she stole the diary coming up next. Stay with us.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, from the Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz.
Heads up with a crash blocking a right lane, 429 southbound at Coia-Popka Road, causing slowdowns. I-4 West, slow from Fairbanks to Colonial, past the beach line, heavy 192 to Champions Gate. Eastbound slow from Osceola Parkway to 535, then past Fairbanks, then 417 to the bridge. Turnpike southbound, heavy delays from the 417 past Osceola Parkway. ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Service for honesty, integrity, and 100% customer satisfaction. Call ProTech at 407-502-6263. Or visit ProTechAC.com. From the WDBO Traffic Center, I'm Dory Don.
Now, from the Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Orlando's news and talk. From the jazz age to the information age, WDBO has been there. Join us in saluting a century of broadcasting excellence. Happy 100th WDBO, the soundtrack to Orlando's history.
All right, I've got a confession to make. I have not been paying very close attention to the Ashley Biden diary story. If a story doesn't interest me, then I generally just don't read up on it. I don't follow a story if I don't have an interest in it. And the little bit I knew about Ashley Biden's diary, I just didn't find it very interesting until now. So I'm a little late to the game on Ashley Biden's diary story. And I'm only interested now because a woman has been sentenced to a month in prison for theft of the diary. And if you, like me, have not been paying close attention to the Ashley Biden diary story, let me get you caught up as I understand it now, okay? So this happened here in Florida in Delray Beach. So there's a house down in Delray Beach. And back in 2020, Ashley Biden, the daughter of Joe Biden, was staying at a home in Delray Beach. Now, my understanding is she was staying there as part of a halfway house she stayed at during one of her rehab stints. She, like Hunter Biden, has a problem with pills. And she has a sex addiction after becoming hypersexualized as a child. Joe Biden's daughter was hypersexualized as a child. So when Ashley Biden left this home, instead of doing what all of the rest of us would do, that is, take your stuff with you when you move out of a house, she left her diary and a whole bunch of her possessions in the home. So then somebody else moved in. That's what happens when you vacate a home. Someone else moved in. And the person who moved in is Amy Harris. Amy Harris is the person who has just been sentenced to a month in prison for stealing Ashley Biden's diary. Now, when I first heard someone stole Ashley Biden's diary, I thought what any sane person would think when you use the term stealing someone's diary. I thought, man, she must have broken into Ashley Biden's house or broke into her car, wherever Ashley Biden keeps her diary, went rifling through her things, found what she was looking for, the diary, and stole it. But that's not what happened. She found the diary in the room where Ashley Biden left it. Now, things get a little weird after that. Because at some point, Amy Harris, the woman who stole Ashley Biden's diary, thought, I've got a money-making possibility right here. So she tried to sell it to the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign declined. Keep in mind, this is 2020. So she then turned to Project Veritas. And Project Veritas paid $20,000 for the diary. Now, much like the Hunter Biden laptop, for quite some time, the Biden camp denied that this was Ashley Biden's diary. Not until much later did Ashley Biden affirm, oh, yes, that is my diary, and I would like it back. But at that point, Project Veritas had already purchased it. Project Veritas, and I'm not going to bore you with the minutiae on this, but Project Veritas recorded a phone call between Ashley Biden and Project Veritas in which Ashley Biden was indignantly saying, I want my stuff back. Meet my friend Eric. He'll meet you and you give everything back. And then someone from Project Veritas started reading passages from the diary. She got indignant and said, I don't want to have to get the Secret Service involved, threatening Secret Service involvement. So now, this woman is going to go to jail for a month for stealing a diary. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. There is a very old legal precedent that has been cited since the beginning of time. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Okay? That's the precedent right there. This woman did not steal Ashley Biden's diary. Ashley Biden left her diary behind. What kind of nincompoop leaves a diary behind, particularly when your diary is kind of sketch? Inside that diary, she writes, Ashley Biden writes, was I molested? I think so. I can't remember specifics, but I do remember trauma, hypersexualized at a young age. I remember being somewhat sexualized with Caroline. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate. In her diary, she wrote that she was in treatment for sexual trauma. She writes in her diary that she changed her routine to shower late at night after her dad had gone to sleep so that she would not be put in a situation where her dad, the president of the United States, would enter the shower with her. And of course, an eager district attorney was more than happy to jail this woman for a month for stealing Ashley Biden's diary. And does the mainstream media pick this up? The mainstream media, which didn't cover this at all, because the Biden campaign never admitted that it was real. They've now, of course, admitted that it was real. Will they be reporting that this woman is going to go to jail for a month for stealing the diary? And will they report what Ashley Biden wrote in the diary? Isn't it relevant how messed up the children of Joe Biden are? Two of them are drug addicts, sex addicts. I think they're both sex addicts. Hypersexualized as a child. Joe, can we just agree that Joe Biden He's got to be just a terrible father. I hate to say that, and I know that he went through a lot. He lost a wife. He lost another child in a car crash. I just find this frustrating that this woman is going to go to jail for a month. And that'll be followed by 3 years of supervised release. This woman, by the way, has 2 children. I think that's what I read, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. All right, 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. So Fox News went south of the border into Mexico, and they ask migrants that are waiting to come across the border who they want to see elected president. I'll break that down for you coming up next. Stay with us here. You're listening to The Joe Kelley Show. Look for The Joe Kelley Show podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, in the WDBO app on-demand section. Check out The Joe Kelley Show Facebook page.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, from the Bogan Munz & Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz & Munz. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
So the FAA is now investigating a Boeing engineer's allegations that assembly defects at the company's 787 Dreamliner raises safety concerns. I would suggest putting that guy on a suicide watch. You remember what that happened to the last Boeing whistleblower? He killed himself. You remember that one. So new Boeing whistleblower. That's got to be a dangerous, Boeing, forget about just the airliners. I mean, they have billions and billions of dollars worth of contracts with the U.S. federal government. All right, migrants waiting to cross the southern border into the U.S. say they want President Biden to win re-election in November because they fear that they would not be allowed into the country if Donald Trump regains control of the White House. If I was Donald Trump, I would get audio of those migrants saying that, followed by the words, "I'm Donald Trump, and I endorse this message." What a great endorsement for Donald Trump. 46-year-old Richard Betancourt says, if it's Trump, it doesn't matter how much I work or want to work, they won't let me in. As he and hundreds of others wait to cross the border at a makeshift encampment in Matamoros, Mexico. 26-year-old Alejandra Falcon, who spent the last 8 months traveling to the border from Caracas, Venezuela, said, if Biden doesn't win, I can't imagine what will happen. After Trump lost his re-election bid, illegal border crossings surged, reaching an all-time high of 2.2 million in 2022. Some 7.3 million migrants have now illegally crossed the southwest border since Biden took office in 2021. That is a figure greater than the population of 36 individual states. Biden vowed in his early days to rescind Title 42, which allowed migrants to be turned away at the border. Now they simply have to claim a credible fear of returning to their home countries to be led into the United States. They're given a ticket to appear in court. And that, frankly, makes many of these migrants not illegal aliens. They are asylum seekers. And if Donald Trump wins re-election, he's going to have a harder time than he thinks or than he's saying in deporting them. Because as we were discussing just last night, there are different categories of people who come across the border. And asylum seekers technically are here legally. Because they, when they crossed the border, expressed fear of returning back to their own home countries. You want to talk about how expensive our homeowners insurance is? I know I'll strike a chord with a lot of people on homeowners, your home insurance. The New York Post reported today, I walk that back. The Wall Street Journal reported today that home insurance companies are increasingly using aerial images from drones and even high-altitude balloons as a tool to dump properties they see as a higher risk. Angry homeowners have reported losing their coverage after being told that they had damaged roof shingles, debris in the backyard, or having undeclared items like a pool or a trampoline. We had a trampoline once. We were not concerned about aerial photography. I am now. But as it would happen, we didn't have dining room furniture. And the dining room was exactly the same measurements as the trampoline. And so we put the trampoline in the house, and there was a vaulted ceiling in the dining room for some reason. So it wasn't a low ceiling, it was a very high ceiling. So and it was visible from the front door when you walk into the house. So we would have Amazon delivery people and pizza delivery people and stuff that we'd open the door and they're like, do you have a trampoline inside your house? And we're like, yeah, we do have a trampoline inside our house. It fit perfectly in that room. But they're using, I get the drones, but high altitude balloons to spy on houses? A woman in Northern California says that she lost coverage after an insurer took aerial photos of her roof. The underwriter said that the roof had lived its life expectancy, but she was told by an independent inspector who went up on the roof that the roof had at least another 10 years left in it. She lost her policy anyway. State Farm announced it would drop coverage for 30,000 residential and 42,000 commercial properties in California. They're doing the same thing here in Florida. That's why your rates are going up so astronomically. A Florida woman claims that God directed her to shoot at cars on I-10 during the eclipse yesterday. She was driving a purple Dodge Challenger with Georgia plates. So is she technically a Florida woman if she has Georgia plates? She was on I-10 and she started shooting at other drivers. She shot two others, hitting one driver in the neck. He was taken to a nearby hospital. The suspect was eventually taken into custody. Troopers found what they describe as an AR-15 and a 9mm handgun. She's been charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, improper discharge of a firearm. She says that God told her to do it. Now, if God is telling you to do something that doesn't conform with Scripture, rest assured it's not God who's telling you. I have friends of mine that swear to me they hear the voice of God. And that God, they talk to God regularly. I pray relentlessly. I've never heard the voice of God, though I do believe that God talks to me through other people and through actions around me. But if you think that you're hearing the voice of God, for whatever reason, and God is telling you something that doesn't match up with what the Bible says, then the voice you're hearing is not God. It's the enemy. It's somebody else. Go see a doctor or go see an exorcist, because it's not God. God most certainly would not tell you to do something that violates the 10 Commandments. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app.
Now, from the Bogan Munz and Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz and Munz. This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. For 100 years, we've been your voice, your source, your heartbeat. From the roaring 20s to the digital age, we've been there for it all. Happy 100th anniversary, WDBO, where history and headlines meet.
We are really blessed to have just the greatest traffic reporters. Paul Cross has been on the morning show this week, filling in for Ed Torrance. Ed is worth his weight in gold. Paul Cross is worth his weight in gold. And Dory Dawn worth her weight in gold. In fact, Dory's just a little thing. She's worth like Paul Cross's weight in gold. I mean, they're all just such wonderful people. If you ever get a chance to meet with them, or you know what you should do is you should get a radio show, and then make sure you have people that do traffic for it are either Dory or Ed or Paul, because they're just wonderful people and they're really, really good at what they do. So my gratitude for Dory Dawn being here and pinch hitting for Paul Cross. I think PC is back with us tomorrow. I think. I could be wrong. Either way, it doesn't matter. Dory does a great job. I thought I was the only person who had an indoor trampoline. Evidently, I'm wrong.
We totally have the same exact setup in our house. There's a trampoline right at the front door.
And it causes many questions when we get pizza deliveries and other people trying to sell us things door to door. We knew you were cool, Joe.
And you know, the thing about the trampoline is, when you think of trampoline, do you think of the springs and how every time you jump on the trampoline, it makes that spring, 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 spring sound? But they also have trampolines now that are made of fiberglass. Thank you. Fiberglass rods. And that's what this trampoline was made of, was with fiberglass rods that hold the tension so that it makes no noise. And it was great to have an indoor trampoline because the kids would wake up and they would just go start jumping on the trampoline. And it wasn't like it would wake us up or anything.
But isn't that also terrifying, coming into a room and expecting to hear trampoline sounds, but instead you just see children flying in the air?
Jumping,
so
yeah.
That's a little terrifying in its own.
There were moments, and there was a banister over it, and when you got twin boys, and I'm thinking, oh man, at one point, one of them was going to say, hey, watch this, and fly over the banister. And multiple times we had to warn them to not get up on the banister. And then as fate would have it, the only one who did get up on the banister and fall was actually Kitty George Washington.
I thought you were going to say you.
No. Kitty George Washington was walking back and forth between the what are they called on a banister? What are the vertical bars called?
Great question.
Yeah. Anyhow. By the way, Greg is back. I don't know if you guys noticed. Greg Rhodes is back. He's on our flight deck here tonight. And you just got back from Washington, D.C., and you were celebrating your anniversary, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Mine and my wife's 5-year anniversry.
5 years and never had a fight. How amazing is that?
Well, we've been together for 16 years. So, it's we're well past the never had a fight stage.
Yeah. So, I'm told that you were in the air Friday when the earthquake happened. You were flying at that time. How did that affect your flight?
Yeah, so we were coming up. We had a connecting flight down to Fort Lauderdale. So we're coming up from Fort Lauderdale to BWI is where we were flying into in Baltimore. And as we're about to approach, we get the usual announcement. We're about to start our descent. Everyone, please go back to your seats. And then almost immediately after that, it was like a cancel that. We're not going to start our descent. The tower at BWI has been evacuated because of an earthquake. That's literally what the pilot told us.
Wow.
So we're in the air and we're like, so what does that mean? He's like, and just trying to be reassuring, he says, we have plenty of fuel. Don't worry about it. We have at least an hour's worth of fuel. I was like, an hour's worth of fuel? You just said that the flight area was evacuated. So we end up flying around Baltimore for about half an hour before they were able to get everything kind of figured out and straightened out before we're able to come in for a landing. But yeah, no, about a half an hour, right as we're about to start our descent is when the earthquake happened.
By the way, my buddy Mike just texted me and said it's a baluster. That's it. That's what it's called. It's a baluster. Thank you, Mike, for that. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, how long then were you guys circling before you were able to land?
About a half hour to 45 minutes. So right up on that hour of extra fuel we had, right?
And then you did land at BWI?
We did. We didn't have any troubles landing or anything like that. Once we got in, there didn't seem to be any issues at the airport. Everything seemed to be running as normal by the time we got in there. But, just about an extra half-hour flight around Baltimore. We got to see the beautiful scenic sights around the air of Baltimore.
Lovely Baltimore. Were you, as you flew over Baltimore, were you able to see the Key Bridge?
That was on the other side of the plane, unfortunately. But there were people that were commenting that they could see it. They could see the ship, and they could see everything was still just there.
Did the captain point it out?
Oh, no. No, he did not.
Oh, I would think the captain would say, hey, if you guys want to see the story that's been in the news every day.
We're going to be up here for an extra half hour, so if you look out this window.
Right. You'd think just as a courtesy, he would then start to go in a loop in the other direction so the other side of the plane could see it.
Right.
So how was D.C. this time of year?
It was beautiful. We ended up, it was a little chilly, but we got a chance to go see the Japanese cherry blossoms, and it was beautiful. We went around the tidal harbor area there, and it was a lovely visit. We really do enjoy going to D.C. every time we get a chance to. And we got to see some really cool things. We saw the Jefferson Memorial, which we didn't see last time. And then also we ended up going to Arlington.
Arlington National Cemetery.
Arlington National Cemetery, right. And I have my great-grandfather is actually interned there. So we got a chance to go actually see his site. It's one of those moments that really kind of hits you when you see something like that.
It does.
The amount of gravestones that they have there, and just it was really impactful. It was a wonderful visit.
And the honor guard, the changing of the guard.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a phenomenal. I'll tell you, if you've never been to Washington D.C., and I know that generally speaking, we hate everything that happens inside the Beltway, and politicians are dirt. But that city is can be so beautiful and overwhelming. We went to the Air Force Memorial, which sits above the Pentagon. It's up at the hill above the Pentagon. It's just this beautiful memorial for the Air Force. Last time we were there, we went there as part of an honor flight for veterans who went. That was the last time I was in D.C. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the Smithsonian Museum is not just a single building. It is a series of museums, and all of them are absolutely free to get into.
Yeah, no, that's one of our favorite parts about D.C. is it's one of the most affordable vacations that you can honestly take, because there are so many sights to see. There are so many museums and art exhibits. We went to the zoo. All of it was free. We didn't pay any admission price. We paid for the Metro card. We paid for our zips around the city, but that was it.
You skipped the Capitol and skipped the White House.
Correct. We'd done the Capitol previously, and we just happened to be a little bit too late to put our application in for the White House.
Yeah, and only recently has the White House kind of expanded their tours. It was closed down mostly during COVID, and it closes pretty regularly, honestly. But it is quite powerful when you go see the seat of global power in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, no, there's so much history in that city. And again, whether you left or right or in the middle, there's a lot of impactful knowledge to build while you're there. You just really do feel the essence of it.
And I love to be able to see kind of the behind the scenes of the security and looking at the rooftop of the White House and looking around the Capitol and trying to see, okay, where are the snipers? Where are the missile launchers? Where are the,
And I believe that there must have been some kind of foreign visitor that was there when we were there on Saturday. We were in the park near the tidal basin, and Marine One was flying back and forth like 3 or 4 times. So it was very interesting, very low flying because again, it's a very restricted airspace, but very low flying direct flights back and forth from the airport back to the White House, which was very interesting.
Every time I'm there, I get chills just looking at some of the stuff that is there.
And the locals just, it's whatever to them.
Right. Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Just like for those of us that live here in Orlando, people are like, oh my gosh, it's Orlando. It's Disney World. And for us, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just waiting for the traffic to die down a little bit before I hit the road and get going. One of the things I want to go back and see is the Museum of the Bible. That is relatively new to Washington, D.C., and I wasn't able to go to that last time. I saw it. Beautiful architecture. Everything there is beautiful architecture. But I wasn't able to go to the Museum of the Bible, but that is something I'm very much looking forward to. Well, a happy anniversary, and thank you for sharing that story with us. I'm Joe Kelley, 844-580-WDBO. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, from the Bogan Munz & Munz WDBO Traffic Center. Auto accident? Choose Bogan Munz & Munz. Now, the the 3 big things you need to know. Powered by Hard Rock Bet.
3. Police in Massachusetts are investigating alongside the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force after an explosive device was detonated on the porch of the Satanic Temple in Salem. The device exploded just after 4 a.m. Monday. The damage wasn't discovered until 12 hours later when staffers arrived. 2. Police in Winter Park are investigating the robbery of a postal worker. Few details have been released, but the robbery happened just after noon Monday in the 1100 block of Minnesota Avenue. Winter Park police ask anyone who may have seen something to contact them. 1. The parents of Michigan shooter are being handed the maximum sentence for involuntary manslaughter. A judge ordered James and Jennifer Crumbly to spend 10 to 15 years in prison today in an historic case.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
All right, Laurel and Greg, I'm about to make you rich. I'm about to make you richer than your wildest dreams. I will offer either of you $500,000 if you can correctly identify the song that has been stuck in my head all day long. Now, I must lay out the rules. $500,000 cash, payable over a very, very lengthy period of time in very, very small increments. But $500,000 cash can be yours if you can tell me right now, properly identify the song that has been stuck in my head all day. Laurel, go.
Rich Girl.
Good guess. Hall & Oates. That song has from time to time been stuck in my head. As fate would have it today, it is not. Greg Rhodes.
Dancing Queen.
Has never been stuck in my head. Terrible guess.
That's your fault then.
Here is the song that has been stuck in my head since the moment I woke up this morning.
About once weekly Ozempic. You may pay as little as $25 for
the Ozempic commercial. I woke up this morning going, oh, Ozempic. Now, do you happen to know what that jingle is based on? What song that jingle is based on?
Oh, it's magic.
By?
That's a great question, but not a part of my answer.
An obscure hit record, one-hit wonder from 1970. A group called Pilot had a song called Magic.
Oh, it's magic. You know, never believe it's not so.
The least I could do is have that song stuck in my head instead of Ozempic. Thank you for listening to The Joe Kelley Show.
Never been awake, never seen a day break, leaning on my pillow in the morning.